Hey, hello there. Sorry about being a couple of minutes late setting it live. I've had a few technical bits and pieces today. Right, can I get a couple of things in the chat if that's possible, just so that I know that you can hear me and everything? Good evening, Eric. If you can just give me you can hear me, you can see my screen saying welcome to the webinar, that'd be great. Lots of highs going on, lots of evenings, where it's technically morning now in the UK, but it's all good. Can you hear me fine? If so, I will just get started because I realise I'm a couple of minutes behind. So. Okay, hit the record button. Boom. Excuse me. Right, you'll have to excuse my throat a little bit because I've been recording all weekend with my band, so I've been singing my little lungs out, so it's a little bit croaky, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. So we will get on with it. Let's just see if some more people are popping in. I've only got a few in so far, but the time change may have confused a few people, so hopefully they will pop in as we go on. Okay, right, let's crack on because then we can get to the good stuff. Right, okay, well, first, like I'm going to with all of these webinars, thank you very much for turning up. Thank you for taking out your time, out your schedule, staying up or getting home from work, whatever it may be. Really appreciate you being here, so thank you very much. Being part of this is one thing, actually turning up to these sort of things is another thing entirely, so thank you very, very much. As usual, this is going to be recorded, so you can watch this back in the VIP area once it's all done. So I would love you to stay for the whole thing, but I do understand that sometimes things happen. Believe me, things have happened to me today, technical wise, so I understand completely. So don't panic too much, but it would be great if you hang around, obviously. Okay, I'm going to do the little about me because there are some people in here that weren't here last time, but I will be mercifully brief, even briefer than last time, just so you know who I am, okay? I'm a full-time internet marketer from the UK. I live in Cheltenham, which is a lovely place, home of the races and the Gold Cup and all sorts of stuff like that. Great place. I've been marketing online for well over a decade. I'll put a decade here. I think it's probably closer to 15, 18 years, something like that, but properly for about a decade. I'm a real life rock star in the sense, as I said, I've been recording actually this weekend. We're releasing a new album and that's what I do in my sort of spare time, if you like, the time that it affords me by doing full-time internet marketing. I've been over 20 years in that particular business, and I've had #1 videos and top 40 hit, as well as playing Reading and Leeds and supporting Green Day and all sorts of wonderful, fantastic things and life experiences. And I've been featured on TV, magazines, blah, blah, blah. You've heard this before. And the other main thing I do is I'm a family man. I've got 4 children. I've been married for 20 years this year, and I've got kids ranging from 22 years old all the way down to nearly 2 years old. And I'm a comic book nerd, just to add that little bit of flavour in. I'm surrounded by all sorts of stuff in this room that I'm in at the moment, models and comics and all sorts of things. So I have quite a diverse sort of range of things that I do. But on to the good stuff. Told you I'd be very brief with that. This particular webinar is all about advanced studio and equipment. Now, I explained in the main course that I know what I like and I know what works, and I don't tend to overcomplicate it. But what I've tried to do here is take some of the things that I've learned that are maybe a slightly more advanced, and also taking the questions that I've been given, and I'll try and address them like I would normally. So hopefully this covers what you want. But as usual, I will go briefly over what we're going to do in its entirety so you can see what's going on, and then we will go through each subject and we'll go into more depth. Okay. At the end of each section, I will stop and do like a question and answers type thing if there are any. So please put them in the chat if you want to. I may not get them straight away, but I will see them when I get to that particular point in the webinar. And then at the very end, we'll have a whole question and answer session anyway. So if you want to leave it right to the end, then that's fine as well. Okay, so today we're going to cover advanced lighting and studio space. And what I've included in this particular segment is I've been asked about using extra lights. I only use 2 lights quite a lot of the time. And I've been asked about using 3, 4 lights and maybe even more. So I've decided to cover that in the advanced lighting and studio. I've also going to revisit the DIY options because a few people asked me about that. And then I'm going to go the other extreme and tell you how you can use just 1 light and also what you have available. And I'm going to do some webcam tricks because when it comes to studios, we always think of this big open space, but it doesn't have to be. So we'll cover that. And then The absolute opposite again, I'm going to do outside and large spaces, so hopefully it covers everything that everyone's been worrying about. Then I'm going to go on to green screens. Now there's not an awful lot to cover on this one, if I'm honest, because green screen is a green screen, but I have been asked a few different things. Now I've also got a new favourite that I like to use, so I'm going to tell you why that is. I'm also going to show you an example. It's actually in the VIP Facebook group, but there'll be a bunch of you on here that haven't seen that, or I will just show you that briefly, and then you can always visit the Facebook group to look at that. And then what not to do with green screens. There's been a couple of things come up that I think I should address again. Okay, then we'll go on to the advanced camera stuff, which is going to include the camera positioning. So it's like where to actually put the camera. It was pointed out to me that I didn't really cover that in the course so much. Also, what you should definitely not do when you're using green screen in particular. Thing called B-rolls. I will explain more when we get there. And then different styles of shot that you can do. Then we'll move on to microphones. Going to look at some different choices compared to what we had in the main course. How to position your microphone. And then there's a problem that came up with the smartphone, which, again, some of you may have seen in the VIP group, but I'm going to cover that in here as well just to make it complete, so you've got somewhere to go and get it all. And then I'm going to go on about capturing the mood as far as microphones are concerned. And then a little bit extras. I'm going to cover some things here. These are quite cryptic titles to this, deliberately so. I'll cover them more when I get there. But does it all have to be make-believe? Just green, or is there more? Tips on what we should be using. And then we'll have our usual question and answer, but a warning. The reason I put a warning here is because, as I said, I know what I use and I know what I like. Now, if we get into real technical nitty-gritty type stuff, then there's a good chance I'll be able to address that at a later date, but I'm not going to be able to just off the top of my head tell you exactly what wattage of bulb is the best thing for your particular size studio, that sort of thing. It's not because I'm not interested in that, and it's just because it's not off the top of my head type stuff. Okay, so that's just a warning on that, but the question and answers will be there at the end and all the way through this webinar. So if I can just get a quick heads up that everyone can still hear me okay, please, just so that I know that I can carry on. Like I say, I had a couple of technical issues before I came on, so just throw a I can hear you or a yes or whatever in there. That'd be great. Fantastic. I've got a 1 there. Good. That's a Alex Becker webinar, that is. Everyone throw a 1 in if you can hear me. Right, okay. It's all looking good. It's all looking good. All looking good. Right, cool. Onwards and upwards then. Okay, so first of all, like I say, what we're going to do is we are going to cover the lighting thing. Now, why do we need good lighting? Again, this is addressed slightly, but people ask enough questions that I figure maybe I need to cover it just briefly again before we go into some more stuff. So a real good reason why you need good lighting is because a lot of the stuff, especially in the previous section, which was the celebrity effect, is all about how you can address the person directly. In order to do this, you need to make good eye contact. Now, it's impossible to make this good eye contact if you don't have good lighting. If they can't see you properly, then you can't make that connection, and you can't get on that level where people are actually listening to you, which means that the engagement will be much, much lower. Okay, now, and more importantly, it just looks really bad if you haven't got good lighting. It just looks poor. It looks like you're a bit of an amateur going into this thing, and you don't want that. I mean, I think of this in the context of green screen all the time, but I realise that people are doing all sorts of varied things and using this particular training as a way to get used to acting on camera or filming other people, that sort of thing. Now, you can imagine if you go and show your work to someone, you're trying to get extra work, or maybe you're showing them the thing that you produce for them. If the lighting is bad, then it's just going to look poor on you, and it's not going to give you a good reputation, which is what this is all about. It's getting you out there to be the celebrity, or to get someone else to look like the celebrity. So some general tips. These are things that I think are important. Now, if you don't know this, then lights have different color temperatures. Basically, different lights have got different kind of moods to them, if you like. To put this into context, fluorescent lights are considered like a cool colour, a cold colour, and tungsten lights are considered a warm colour. Now, I'm only mentioning this because one thing's important. It's not important that you know why this is, or all the different variances and nuances of all the different lights. That really isn't important. What's important is that when you choose a particular thing, you make sure that it's uniform around the rest of your studio. Because if you've got warm lights in one place and cold in another, it's going to look funny. So that's the only reason I actually mention that, is just make sure they are similar all the way across your studio. Okay, right, some more general tips as far as just the studio space is concerned. I've had people sort of worrying about shadows and things like that, and where they've set up the lights like I showed you, but then they've got these weird shadows behind them. Now, the way to get rid of this is to position the person as far away from the screen as possible within reason. That doesn't mean put them miles away from the screen, because it's kind of pointless having the screen if you do that. What I mean is, like, you'll actually see the shadows disappear and become softer as you bring them away from that screen. So that's a good tip, is to get them away and just mess around with the positioning of the talent on the screen and see where those shadows start disappearing. Excuse me. Also, very, very important, going to say it again, say it all the way through the course, but evenly light the screen. People are sort of saying that they've got a hard job taking out the green. It's going to be purely down to the lighting and the fact that you're not evenly lighting the screen. Now, I say purely down to lighting, it could be that you've got a creased backdrop, that sort of thing, but that's still down to the lighting. Once you notice that, because your lighting is good, you'll be able to sort that out by ironing it or steaming it or whatever it is you need to do to get rid of those creases. But always evenly light the screen. The more uniform the colour, the easier it is to cut that away. And another good tip that someone was asking about, they were doing the green screen. It's actually when I put up a video, I don't know if you saw it in the VIP Facebook, of me kind of messing around, pretending I was outside, and then there was special effects going on with different autumn things and snow and things like this. And I literally just threw that up there, you know, without thinking. But it made me think about the fact that coloured gels are actually a very good thing to have. If you can put these on the lights that you've got, if it's available for you to put these coloured gels over the top, then try and match a coloured gel with what your final shot's going to be. So if it is kind of an outside autumny type thing, you can put like a red or an orange gel over the front of the light, and this will actually give you that kind of colour that means you can actually use it in your final shot and look like you belong in the area without having to manipulate it too much. If you don't know what gels are, they are literally just coloured pieces of almost plastic, but they're specially made so they don't melt onto your light. And all it is you're just changing the colour of it. If you think disco lights, that sort of thing, you can use these, and then you can actually do it so that you look far more in the picture when you actually come to the final editing stage.
Your line is now Your line is now unmuted.
Okay, they are just some little tips. They're just a few things that I thought were worth covering. So now I'm going to go through with some of the questions I've actually been asked. Now, one of the main questions was, yes, I see you use 2 lights, but I want to use more. I'd like to know how to set up like 3 lights, 4 lights, you know, what do I put on the backdrops, that sort of thing. So I'm going to cover that in this particular place. So using 3, 4 lights and more, I've called this. Now, the reason you do this is you want to make the subject look more 3D. Now, the reason for this is because a screen is 2D. And if you've got that screen is 2D, you've basically got to fool. Sorry, but excuse me, I just messed up on that. You've basically got to fool yourself into... Sorry, technical difficulties coming up, like I said. So, hang on. There we go, all good, all good, all good. Right, basically speaking, sorry, to redress, I've been having all sorts of demons going on with this laptop today, and it's obviously just reared its head, but it looks like I've caught it in time, so that's all right. Okay, so we want to make the subject more 3D. Hi, Harry, by the way. How you doing? We want to make the subject more 3D, and the way that we do this is through clever lighting. Now, the reason we do this is because the screen is 2D, and we need to fool our eyes into thinking that we're actually looking at something in the real world. Okay, now, and the best way to do that is through clever lighting, and to do this, we use 3, 4, or more lights. Now, there's like a 3 light setup that I'm going to take you through now, and this is kind of the standard, if you like. This is what most people use in order to make this work. It's used in film, it's used in TV, it's used pretty much everywhere. It's a very, very good way of doing it. So the first light we're going to use is called the key. Now, don't worry about the positioning of this, because I will show you a diagram in a short while which shows you exactly how all this fits into each other. But basically what we've got here is one called the key. Now, this is our main light. This is the one that we need to give us the most light, and it's also going to be the brightest of these lights. Now, the positioning of this is usually for like a portrait shot, but it works very well for green screen and everything as well, because you tend to have a person stood in the middle of your screen, and then you want to like light them up in a certain way. Okay, so this one is the brightest light of the lot. And what we do is we position it 45 degrees onto the side of the face. Like I said, I'll show you the positioning in a minute. But if you imagine that right in front of you is 0 degrees, and if it was shining directly onto the side of your face, that's 90 degrees, then you'll see what I mean by 45 degrees. Okay, now the actual sort of height of this as well, you want to have it sort of around head height, so that it's actually lighting up the face, because we're going to use other lights to light up the rest of the body, so we don't need to worry about that at the moment. The second light is called the fill. Now, the fill it does exactly what it says. It's because you've got this bright light on one side of the face, you're going to have this like one-sided shadow at the moment. Now, the idea is the fill goes on exactly the opposite of the face, of the one you've just positioned. So it's exactly the same, 45 degrees, so 0 degrees is in front of you, 90 degrees is coming onto the side of your face, and then 45 degrees onto the other side of the face. But it's very important that you make sure that it's not as bright as the key light that we just set up. Now, the reason for this is because if they're both the same brightness and they both hit the face at 45 degrees, it'll actually cancel itself out and turn it into a flat colour. Now, this looks awful, basically, on screen and stuff like that. It just doesn't look that great. Now, you'll notice that on my green screen stuff in the course, or you might have noticed, is I've literally got 2 of them like this 45 degree, because I'm not too worried about that with the lighting setup I've got, because I've got kind of, and we'll go into this later, but I've got room lights in there anyway that kind of throw different shadows without having to worry about this. But this is like a professional, more advanced setup if you want to actually force this sort of look, and it does look very good. So it's important it's not as bright as the key, so that it doesn't give you this flat feel. This some people call it the newsreader look, because that's how they tend to light those studios. It's like when you look there, it's like a real caked on makeup-y kind of look. It's just not very nice, so you want to try and avoid that if you can. So that's the second light. So now we've got one light of 45 degrees on one side of our face, and another light of 45 degrees on the other side, but not as bright. Bear with me, I'm just going to take a quick drink of coffee. As I said, I've been singing all weekend, so it's excuse me, I do apologise. Okay, so we've got one on one side at 45 degrees, the other at the other side at 45 degrees, and they're not the same light. Very important. Then what we do is we've got a third light, which is the backlight. Now, this light is exactly what it says. It goes behind the subject. Okay. Now, the reason that we do this is we actually want it to have an effect where what it does is it separates the main person, the talent, the object, whatever it is you're focusing on. It separates it from the backdrop. Now, the reason to do this is because it gives it that sort of, it gives it more depth. It's, again, you've got to remember that the screen is a 2D thing. So what we're doing is we're making our eyes notice this difference that would normally be happening naturally in the real world. We can see that perception, we can see the differences. But with a 2D screen, and when we're doing video, we need to kind of force that upon them. Now, it's kind of, when we're doing green screen, it's a little bit different, because we kind of have to light the background anyway. That's just something that we do. So in a way, this is doing something different. Again, we can use this with green screen as well. It's not a problem, because it can light the hair and the shoulders, as I said here. Now, you might think that's an odd thing to say, but if you think about it, with the setup we've already got, or that you should have, you're lighting up either just yourself, or I'll show you an advanced thing in a minute where you're lighting up the background as well. Now, this one will actually separate you from this background, but when you're doing green screen, you don't really want that, because you need a uniform colour across the back. So this is more for when you're using backdrops that aren't green screen, okay? But it is good for lighting up the hair and the shoulders. You can reposition this backlight, and it gives that kind of bounce effect off of it, and it does really help. It just makes it really stand out. It's very, very clever. Now, we can use a fourth light as well, which is for the backdrop, like I say. But this is optional in some cases. Like I say, if you're using a green screen, then you're actually going to be using, if you want to use a backdrop light for your green screen, then you're actually going to be using 2 of them anyway. I'll show you exactly what I mean in just a second. So to recap on this, because I've kind of mumbled a little bit through that, and I do realise that, I do apologise. But what it is it's basically for a three light setup, sorry, you want a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. Okay, now to recap, the key light is the most powerful one, and it's on the side of your face. As you can see, it's got like a 45-degree angle to whoever the object is. Then you've got fill light, which is a softer one, which is pointing at exactly the opposite, and then a backlight, which is behind you. Now the thing is, if you've got green screen, then you can either set it up like this setup here, where you've got the same sort of thing, except you've got a background light on your green screen and a backlight lighting you up, or you could turn that number 3 backlight around, and you could actually have 2 of them pointing at the green screen to really uniform color the green screen. So then you've got 2 on the background and you've got 2 on yourself. Because we're using green screen, we don't really need to separate ourselves from that backdrop, do we? Because we're going to replace the backdrop anyway. So there's no real reason to use that. So I know that's kind of a little bit complicated, but some people were asking about lighting without a green screen. Some people are asking with. But most people were asking, hey, I want to use 3, 4, 5 lights. Now this is how you would do that. So for the green screen, you would point those 2 at the background and not worry too much about that backlight. So hopefully that sort of, in a slightly befuddled way, hopefully that explains that sort of thing. Okay, I'm just going to take another drink because my throat really is playing me up today. I do apologise. So if anyone's got any questions or anything for that particular bit, then feel free to pop it in there. Eric, is that diagram, I only just seen your question, so is that diagram okay for what you were asking? Brilliant. Like I said, I lost my train of thought a little bit there, and I'm so sorry. But it's all good now. It's all been explained. So that's how you use more light. So hopefully that shows that. As far as I mean, this doesn't really show the height of the lights. As far as the height and all that sort of thing of the lights, the ones that are actually shining on the person should be pretty much at like sort of eye level. Okay, the backlight obviously needs to be behind the person, but if you were to put it directly behind them, you would be able to see it in shot. So it's all right to put it slightly to the side like this particular diagram shows you. And then the background lights are going to be, again, they're going to be kind of in the middle of the screen. It depends what type of lights you've got. We'll cover a few different lights in a minute, but it depends what sort of lights you've got. But they need to be sort of in the middle of the screen. So you've got your ones on you at head height. You've got the backlight tends to be below the person and shining up a bit. Or it can be, actually, if you want the hair thing that I said, like the light on the top of the hair and the shoulders, it actually needs to be right up, sort of in the ceiling. Play with it. It's one of those things you'll know what you like when you see it. And then the background lights for the actual background, if it's just the background normally, then you can actually have it as low as you like and shining up the background so that it separates you. If it's a green screen, then you want it in the middle, either side, making a really uniform green colour. Okay. Right, DIY options revisited. Now, the reason I've gone back to this is because I had some people saying, oh, well, you know, with the lights and stuff, I've seen DIY stuff. Now, so I decided that I'd revisit it on this advanced webinar. But the thing is, I still think kits are better. I'm really sorry. I have been asked to do stuff, but I just honestly think that the kits are so cheap now that why would you go through all that hassle of maybe getting it wrong and, you know, maybe even doing something quite dangerous because you just don't know. But I did find a really, really good tutorial on it. So if anyone does want to go and check it out, I will make sure that you get the link that that's just there if you haven't seen that already. But they basically go through the actual process of going to, you know, what you need from the hardware store and all this sort of thing. Now, when they add it up, I'm sorry, but it's more expensive than most kits are now. There was a time where it probably made financial sense. Now I think it's probably just as easy to go and get the actual kits. But one thing I did while I was searching around trying to find this thing to bring to you, I did see someone mention about other kind of DIY moments that they'd used. And one thing I thought was very cool and actually quite amusing in a way, so I thought I'd include it in here, was if you've heard of it, diffuser paper. It's basically it's a bit like greaseproof paper, goes over the top of the lights. It's what the umbrellas do and what the soft boxes do as well, the lights that you use, and it basically diffuses the light. And you can buy this particular paper. Now, some people are going in, rather than buying that expensive stuff, they're actually using shower curtains, you know, the frosted shower curtains, and translucent white drapes. So, which I thought was quite cool. I thought that was quite innovative, and so I thought I'd pop that in there. So if you are sort of trying to save some money on that sort of thing as well, go grab a frosted shower curtain instead and drape that over whatever it is. Because I know for a fact that some people are using just what they've got, which is what I'll get onto now. Okay, going on the other extreme, using just one light. Now, you can do this, but you do have to position clever. Okay. I've got a diagram for this as well, but it's a very simple diagram. But basically what you have to do is you have to position it as if you remember the key light was just at one side and off at 45 degrees. Now you have to basically position it in the same sort of place, but a little bit further away, because otherwise you get too much of a shadow, too much of a dark side compared to the light side. And the way to use one light, I'm afraid it isn't just as easy as, hey, I've got one light. What you have to do is you have to cheat slightly and use a reflector for like a fake second light. So what we're doing is we're using the power source of just one bulb, just one setup. It doesn't have to be one bulb, obviously, but just one softbox or one umbrella, whatever it may be. Obviously, the brighter, the better. And then what we're doing is we're actually going to send it from one side onto our object and then use a reflector to bounce it back off. So you can see from this very simple diagram, basically what we're going to do is put it where our key light would be, and then instead of a second light we're just going to use a reflector. Now if you don't know where a reflector is, it can be anything that will reflect light, to be honest. It doesn't have to be one of these fancy camera photography silver foil things, because you could just have a really big white board. As long as it's got some sort of sheen to it, then it's going to reflect this light off of it and it'll make a real difference. Now this is great if you've only got the one light, or maybe you've only got the one light source even, which is another thing I'm going to come on to now, which is using what you already have. Now I get quite sort of involved in the fact that I'm teaching you how to do all these different things, and I sometimes forget that, you know, that maybe you don't want to spend out on that extra piece, or maybe you just want to try it. You don't want to spend a penny, you know, and you just want to try this thing out, see if you even enjoy it, and then do that. So it's important, and this may seem common sense to some of you, and I apologize if it does, but I still think it's worth pointing these things out to people, because sometimes common sense to one person didn't even pop into the head of the other. And this particular one is like just using what you may have at hand already. And the number one thing that people tend to forget about is, if you've got windows in the place that you're recording in, use them. They're a light source. Basically a softbox, which is that sort of the big thing with the bulbs in, which you use for diffusing the light, that's basically trying to mimic a window in a way. So you can actually use a window and position your filming equipment, etc., so that you can utilize this natural light. Now, if you also take into account the DIY thing I just said about the shower curtain, the frosted shower curtain, or the drapes, you can literally have a light source with a diffuser on it by just putting a shower curtain in the way, or putting your translucent drapes in the way, and without spending a penny on anything, you've now lit that one side. If you then take the one light technique that I just showed you and put some sort of reflected surface on the other side, you can literally use that light to bounce off and use that as two light sources. So it's a fantastic, easy way to do it. Using the room lights. Now, I do this all the time without thinking, but if you position yourself in the right place underneath whatever that light may be, maybe you're in the garage, you've got a big fluorescent kind of lighting, I don't know, or maybe you're just in a normal bedroom and you've got the one light in the middle of the room. If you can position yourself so you can actually use that, you can use that as your backlight, the one that lights up your hair and your shoulders. It's already in the room, but sometimes we forget. We're so, like I say, we're so sort of keyed up with setting up this perfect studio, we forget about the actual lights we can use in the room. So make sure you utilize the space that you've got if you can, and position yourself under these lights so they can actually use those as like the downward light that you need. As I said, often so caught up in buying stuff that you forget these simple things. You forget these little things that save you money and time as well. So if you're lucky enough and you've got a light and a window quite close to each other, you might well have all the light source you possibly need. Throw a reflector on one side and you're good to go. Okay, so that's like using what you've actually got about. I thought that was quite a important thing to remind people, that it doesn't have to be all about buying equipment. And then someone else actually asked me the other day, and I never thought about this as a studio, but of course it is, and that was their webcam. They were like, yeah, I make a lot of videos, but my videos are all made on webcam, and I do like the talking head stuff, I do the reviews, and I'm sure a lot of us do. And they were a bit worried about the fact that basically it looked a bit crap on their webcam, because you don't really think about that when it comes to lighting techniques. So the main reason they wanted it is they wanted to look good for Skype calls. They wanted to like record themselves while they were doing Skype calls, use them in some training they were doing, and they didn't want to look bad, basically. So I had a quick look, and I have done some of these techniques before, but I had a look around to see if I could find any other techniques as well. I came up with a few sort of ideas and positioning and stuff on how you can actually look really good when it comes to doing your webcam. Now, the first one that I've got is if you've got a wide monitor, you can actually buy lights from like a hardware store, places like that. Excuse me. Lights from a hardware store, and you can actually clamp them to the side of your monitors. Now, this kind of goes back to that DIY thing that I showed you, which I will put the link up for. In fact, if I will find that, and I'll put that in the chat box quickly. I don't expect you to sort of run off right this second, but at the same time, if I just pop that in there, I should be able to put that in to the chat box. Bear with me. Technical. No, I shouldn't have done this, seeing as it's it's being like that today. Right, there we go. There we go. I'll pop that into the chat box. You should all be able to see that in the chat box now. Just get this back to where I need to be. Like I say, hopefully you won't all just skip off right now and go and check it out, but it means that you've got that link now. Now, what I was saying is, like, the way that they actually set up their down and dirty lighting kit, as they call it, is they actually go to the hardware store and buy all these different parts, and that's exactly what you can use to clamp onto the side of your monitor. Now, I'll show you a little diagram in a minute, but again, it's very, very simple to do, and that's a way that you can actually light yourself really well. Now, the other thing you need to do, or you can do, is you can actually use desk lamps. So your ordinary desk lamps, you can get 2 of those and put them either side. You can actually put diffuser paper on those over the top of it. Now, with this sort of thing, as with all the DIY stuff, as I said, it's like, just go careful, because I don't want anyone burning their house down or anything silly like that. So this is me saying, hey, try this out, but it's better if the bulbs obviously don't get hot. And you can use that diffuser paper, and they're like mini stands anyway. They're like mini umbrella stands, mini box lights, and they will actually light you up really well as well. Now, a thing that I actually found out that I hadn't thought of before, and actually it's something I could do right now because of the setup I have at home, and I'm sure many people might have one, is a spare monitor. Now, bear with me on this one. Basically, with a spare monitor, you can actually set it so that you turn the brightness right up. Now, you put the monitor sort of up in front of you. So you've got your, if you imagine your laptop's in front of you, or your computer's in front of you, then the other monitor is slightly higher up in front of you as well. And if you turn that brightness right the way up on that monitor, it actually acts as like a big box light. Now, you'd be surprised how much difference it makes. It's actually, I tried it out, and it's amazing how much difference it can make. Yeah, Eric's just popped in there. So I've used my cell phone for extra lighting. Exactly, it's the screen. Anything with a screen on it. If you've got like an iPad or a spare whatever, sat there, then you can use that to actually light it up. Now, I hadn't actually thought about that sort of thing. I think that's a very, very clever way to use something that you might have sat there. Many people have old monitors that they can't use or whatever, and all you got to do is connect it up to your computer and literally throw like a Word document on there or something like that, so you've got a blank white space, and then just turn the brightness right the way up, and it will light up the front of your face, which I thought was very, very cool. And then there's the positioning. Now, when it comes to webcam stuff, it's important that you position it properly as well. If you can actually use one light as well, like with that monitor, obviously that's in front of you. If you wanted to use one table lamp, desk lamp type light, then always have it right in front of you. But when it comes to the actual webcam, so that you look flattering, and I'll come on to some camera stuff in a minute, but sorry, bear with me. I do apologise for these couple of glitches today. It's okay. With the positioning of the webcam, what you actually want to do is lift up your laptop. It's normally a laptop, but if it's a webcam on top of a monitor or whatever, just make sure it's pointing down slightly at you, because it's not very flattering having a webcam looking up your nose. It's just not the best look. So that's the way to position your laptop. So any questions on that particular one while I sort out this stupid nonsense that's going on? I know you can't see it because it's on my other monitor, but I keep getting things popping up and all sorts. But if there's any questions on that sort of thing, or if there's anything that I haven't covered that you'd like me to on that sort of thing, then I would be more than happy to. But here, there we go. Right, so with the monitors, I'll come back to the question in just a second, but this is literally, if you were to clamp it to a monitor, you can see it does that. I'm not sure I needed a diagram for that. I'm sure you're all fairly good at imagining that particular one. And then with the desk lamps, it's much the same thing again, except obviously you'd have it, imagine it like a mini, it's like a mini studio. That's the best way to look at it. Okay, going from one extreme to the other. So we covered the webcam stuff, and now we're going to cover this particular subject here, which is outside and large spaces. Now, again, I know that people aren't always using this for green screen. It's not just a green screen course, it's a how to act on camera course. So people are using it for different places. Now, with the outside and large spaces, the thing is, we have a couple of issues that can happen. And these are the main ones that I thought of, and they also got mentioned by a couple of people I was speaking to. So sunny days is one of them. Now, if you're outside and the day is sunny, you could say, oh, that's brilliant, but actually it creates massive shadows. Now, the problem with this is obviously that it's going to make people look harsh. You can't get the proper sort of lighting going on. And so you need some solutions to it. Now, there's a few things you can do. You could use artificial lights like you do inside, but there's a very good chance if you're outside that you're not going to have the power sources and stuff to do that. So that's not really an option. You can bounce, you can use reflective foil or a reflective sheet, whether that can even be like a big white piece of shiny card, it's up to you, to bounce the light back underneath and take away those deep shadows, which is when you see people doing like sort of camera shoots and that, and they've got the silver guy standing there with the big silver shield. That's exactly what they're doing. They're getting rid of some of that extreme shadowing. Or even easier, you could move them just into a better place if that's a possibility. Now, obviously, if you're filming something like, I don't know, some sort of match, some sort of sports event or something, you can't move everyone into like a slightly shaded area. But if it's just you and you're filming something for like a business or something like that, then obviously you can get them, you can reposition them in a position that's better. And the other option is obviously wait for the optimum time of the day if you can, in order for the light to be in the correct places. Now, these are all obvious things to do when you know them, but up till then it's kind of like, how do I solve that? Personally, I prefer the reflective foil thing because you can manipulate that a little better, and it also means you can sort of do things at whatever time you happen to be there. So large spaces is kind of connected to this, but this can be inside as well. This could be like a long hall or something like that, or maybe you're inside a sports hall. All sorts of different reasons why you might have a large space. Now, the light doesn't travel because light only goes so far and only affects things for so long. And if it's too big a space, it's just not gonna cut it. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a way of actually using that large space to our advantage. Now, the one option is you can spend a lot of money and bring a lot of lights and try and light it all up. But there's a very good chance that means you're going to have lights all in all your shots, and that's not what you want. The next option is you can use the available lights. So, chances are if it's a big place, it's probably got a load of fluorescence in the ceiling, or maybe it's got a lot of windows along one wall. Just use them to your best advantage, and then actually in the editing stage, you can try and get rid of any, you can try and brighten it up, you can try and contrast it up, that sort of thing. But another really cool thing to do is just try using the actual space you're in to bounce the light sources you've got around. So it's almost like using a big reflector. It's like if you can point your lights at the ceiling, for example, and try and angle them to bounce about, you'll find that the fact that the ceiling is so large means that it'll actually turn that light into a much bigger, softer, wider space. So bouncing it off of the actual, using the space against itself is actually my number one solution for that sort of thing. Okay, right, that's it for kind of lighting as far as I'm concerned, and sort of some of the studio bits. So if anyone's got any questions about lighting that they want to throw in now, then more than happy to answer them. And I will take a drink so that my throat lasts. Excuse me. Okay, Dan saying, with the umbrella light kit on Amazon, the included lights look to be the same intensity. Are you talking so that you can do the like the 3 light technique that I was saying about the different densities and stuff? Right. The way to solve this is actually quite simple. If you've got ones with the same intensity and you've got the space to, obviously, I understand this might not be, but just move one of them further away. Move one of them closer and one further away, and you'll get the same thing. You'll get the same result. One will be softer and one will be brighter. So that's the way to do that. The other thing you can do is you'll actually find that with umbrellas. Yeah, umbrellas. I've got umbrellas as well. With the umbrellas, if you ever done it so that you actually bounce the light back on itself rather than actually using the umbrella out front, because you can have like the bulb. I've got no diagram for this because the question, but if you've got the bulb and then you put the umbrella on it, like so, the umbrella is actually facing you. So if you like, the top of the umbrella is facing you. Now, if you turn that whole light fixture the other way around, so the light's actually facing away from you, what happens is it bounces off the inside of the umbrella and gives you a whole different sort of light. So if you do one of them like that and one of them the other way around, you'll actually find that you get two different reflective capabilities. So it doesn't matter that they're the same bulb. And yeah, Chris, yeah, kitchen foil does make a great reflector. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm repeating these questions more for the recording for people that can't turn up, obviously, because we can all see the chat. Don't forget to be nice. So yeah, any more question on that before I move on? Otherwise, I'll move on quickly to the green screen. There's not an awful lot on the green screen because I've obviously done such an amazing job of covering it in the first one. So I didn't get any questions. If that, or people just aren't sure. Right, I'll move on. Okay, right, green screen then. Excuse me, my throat went completely then to do that. Green screen then. Green screen, right. My new favourite thing is the portable screen. I know in the course I said about the cloth and how that is the best, and it is still the best if you've got the space for it and if you're not taking it up and down. Now, I've been asked a lot more since doing all this sort of thing to do things like at talks and things like this about video. In fact, I'm going to London on the weekend to talk at like a marketers event about how to make a engaging JV video. So I sent an email out to some people in case they wanted to come along to that. But it's because of that, I'm finding myself taking it up and down a lot more than I used to. Plus, I'm getting asked by some local people to do stuff there, you know, and it's just becoming more involved, basically, and I'm taking it up and down more than ever. So I actually decided to get the portable one instead. Now, I had one of these a while ago, and I moved about 1.5 years ago, I suppose, and I can't find it. So I went and bought another one. So I've actually got an example of one here, so I'll just see if this pops up properly, and hopefully doesn't make everything so ridiculously choppy. So right here, this is the American version. I'm actually in the UK, so mine was actually more expensive than this, but it's just to show you how cheap this is. Now, it's my new favourite because the whole iron it, stretch it out thing is completely redundant because it's actually already tight. So all you do is you literally fold it up into this tiny little thing. You can. The other reason is I get on the train a lot to go to these events that I do and that, and I didn't want to be carrying obviously a massive like 6-foot frame and a folded up basically massive bread sheet of, you know, and so on and so on. So I bought one of these and it's awesome. I think basically I'm gonna get rid of the other green screen and just use this when I need to, because you can stand in front of it. The very nature of green screen means that you don't have to, unless you sort of wave your arms about a lot, and I wave my arms about a lot, but I don't need any more space than this gives me. You can just stay within that area, and then you can actually crop yourself in the editing stages anyway. So you don't need anything bigger than that. So I thought I would point that out. That is, honestly, it's my new favourite thing. So I actually say that ahead of the sort of the cloth one now, because it is just so easy to use. And I was also asked, like, obviously I'm all about saving money when it comes to the buying the equipment and stuff, and we've had some great reports of people finding like cheap cameras and things like that, which is fantastic, because that's the whole reason I discussed what I did in the course. I wanted people to go out and like not spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars unless they wanted to, of course, or if they already had it. But I wanted to make sure people got the best bang for their buck. But people were asking me, can I not just go out and get a sheet? Okay, now I'm kind of boo-booing this now anyway, because like for sort of $40 you can get one of those portable ones, and I vote that. But if you do really not want to spend even $40 on something like that, then people are asking, why can't I just go and get a green sheet? It looks the same, and if you're lucky you will find one. But the fact is that even the greenest of green bed sheets will have yellow cloth in it, and it'll have other different colors. And the thing is, when it comes to green screen, you want it to be the most uniform it possibly can. Now the chroma key type stuff, they're not just a green, they are made from one thread, one color, and the whole thing is just one particular color. So that's why not just a sheet. And also the paint, I was asked a couple of things about painting the chroma key type paint. Now this is one that you can actually go out and get paint from somewhere else, because whatever color paint you buy, it's going to be the same color all the way through the tin. It doesn't change. Obviously you want a nice contrasting color, but someone said that it wasn't working very well for them, and it turned out that there was a slight texture to the wall. Now, to their credit, it didn't look like that until you painted it, but the fact is, I figured I'd throw that in here and say, please avoid textured walls. Okay, it's not gonna go very well for you if you don't. And the other thing I got asked the other day was about music videos. Now, this is in the VIP area again in the Facebook group, so I'm not going to go into this, but I will throw the link into the chat for you so you can see what's what. This is one of my videos. Oh, this is just a nightmare tonight. Right, this is one of my videos, and you can take a look at this at your leisure. Not a problem, but it just shows you the stuff you can do with green screen. Oh, Harry's saying did you buy one of the portable green screens? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, they're fantastic. Really, really, really good. Love it. Right, let's pop that in there. Get the hang of this now. And there you go. You can go and rock out to that. Like I say, that is in the Facebook group as well. So if you want to wait, then by all means wait and go in there. But that's kind of what got me into green screen in the first place. That's my band and like us doing green screen stuff. It just shows you what's possible with it. Now the reason I put that in the green screen area, even though it's not strictly about green screen or advanced anything, is because that's all the questions I had for green screen. So obviously either everyone's cool with what they got, or they're still trying it out, or they haven't bought theirs yet, so they're just going ahead. So I thought I'd just throw those couple of bits in there just in case you were still unsure of what to get. So if there's any question about green screen, throw them in there now while I take a quick drink of coffee, and then I will carry on with the next bit, which is the camera stuff. I feel like now is a good time to say thank you again for everyone that's here, everyone that's still hanging around. Really, really appreciate it. Just reading the comment. What's that, Eric? I have a lighting kit and green screen, Canon T3. Okie dokie. Right. So, onwards and upwards. Camera stuff. Straight on shot boredom. Sounds like a headline of a tabloid, doesn't it? Basically, what it is I was thinking about it the other day, and people were sort of asking about position of cameras and all this sort of thing. We're absolutely fine. Not a problem with that at all. But I realised that everyone, it's almost like, because that's how these things have been shot and how you see this online a lot and in videos, people kind of think of the straight on shot as being the only shot they can possibly do, but it's not. Just because that's the standard doesn't mean you have to do that. I mean, it's like when we're doing different cuts and things like that, it's actually good to mix it up. But it's also, as long as you're not too crazy and, you know, people can tell what you're doing and you can still light that background like you need to, then why not try some different angles? Why not try doing it from sides slightly higher than you would normally, slightly lower than you would normally? And you'll find that that in itself makes you stand out from the crowd, because you're making very cool angles. You're making it, don't go too crazy because it'll look too arty, unless that's the vibe you're going for, obviously. But when you're coming in from like certain places and videoing other people, even if you're doing these slightly different shots, you can actually use them as cuts for different things. So I thought I'd mention that here, because you don't have to do straight on shots. Don't forget, you can do all sorts of other things as well if you want to. It's not a problem. No one's telling you the rules really here. We're just giving you ideas on what to do. So break away from that straight on shot boredom and try it out. If you don't like it, skip back to the straight on shot. It's not a problem. Okay, positioning the camera is kind of in this kind of thing as well. And what this is it was mentioned that even though I show you where to set up the lights and all that sort of thing, I didn't really mention where to set up the camera. Now, with the camera, basically, the distance of the camera, I did mention this, it depends on the wide angle of your lens. You'll only know that by actually going and seeing what your lens can see. Depending on where that is, that's how far away it can be, depending on how much view you want to have in the frame. Now, the lens should be pretty much at eye height. And with the ones I do, it actually looks like mine's ever so slightly lower, and it probably is. It's probably about my sort of nose height, not much lower than that, because my camera isn't that far away from me. Because of the angle of the lens, it means it doesn't have to be too far away. And I do that kind of deliberately, because it means that I'm sort of slightly imposing, but in a kind of larger than life type way, but without being too scary, too sort of I'm not being intimidating, but it's almost like I'm slightly larger than life than I would be. Now, the reason I do this, I got this idea from the fact that when I'm up on stage and I'm playing live, it's weird the number of people, because I'm a fairly average height dude, and it's like when I meet people and I'm not on stage, they're like, I thought you were a lot taller. And it's because of partly the perception that I'm up there, and it's partly because I'm actually up on the stage looking down slightly at them, and I thought maybe this would transfer itself into video, and it does. So that's why I do that. Now, some people actually like to have it slightly above the eye level. If you remember with the webcam thing, it was to look down slightly, because it can be a little bit more flattering. So again, with anything like this, try it out, but that's why I do that slightly underneath vibe. So try it, see whether it looks a bit better coming up. Try these different angles. Does that mean I have to lose some weight, says Eric? What, because like the larger than life comment, or the looking down on yourself? Because it can be quite unflattering to look up at someone, actually. It's not the best. It's good for Halloween lighting and stuff like that, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a fantastically flattering look. I've got good cheekbones, that's what it is, so I'm alright, it's okay. Right, moving on with the position of the camera. So yeah, just give it a go, but that's why I do it slightly lower than I do. Most people tend to do it eye line with the lens though. That's just standard stuff. Right, 2 cameras can make it rock. Now, if you're like me, you've collected a couple of cameras through the way, whether it's just a smartphone camera and your flip camera, and it doesn't have to be expensive stuff, but you've got a couple of cameras. Now, if you've got the room, then I would advise getting another cheap tripod and setting it up at a slightly different angle. Now, the only downside with this is, depending on your setup, you might well be able to see all the gubbins that you're using, all the lights and all that sort of thing. And obviously you don't want that. But if you can do it where maybe it's zoomed in and it's closer up, then I show you a technique in the main course where you can actually fake a second camera. You can fake a second camera shot. But with this, you can have an actual second camera shot running the whole time that you're recording. Now, this means when it comes to editing, you can make it look very cool and look like you've got far more expensive equipment than you have by actually changing the angle completely and having these cuts to these different cameras. So if you've got a second camera, you might as well utilize it. You might as well throw it on there. In this digital age now, it's not like you have to replace the film. You just press play, and if it turns out like a load of rubbish, then you just dismiss that one and use the main shot. But it's very good to do that. And a B-roll, that brings me on to that, because it's the same sort of thing. Now, a B-roll is basically, it's footage of anything else that you're going to use to cut into stuff. Now, this doesn't really apply to green screen so much as to just normal filmmaking. And if you think of it like, let's say you were filming a wedding and you got the main shot of the wedding of everyone coming out of the church. Now, the B-roll would be things like shots of the graveyard, or shots of the cars coming up the drive, or shots of the church itself, or someone laughing and joking and having a drink over on the sidelines. That would be that sort of thing, because then you can cut to these things when you're doing the actual project later on. Now, the idea is that it gives that sort of it gives that feeling of being there. Now, you can cheat on this if you want. And use something like video blocks, which I recommend anyway, and you can actually use their footage for that sort of thing. But if you want if you're doing something actually on location, then obviously it's going to make sense to have the stuff that's going on around you. Now, the way to do this is literally, you've got your main shots, but then every now and again just have this second camera, or the first camera if it's not stationary, for the whole time, and just film different things. At the time, you'll think it's completely random, but they will come to the editing stage, you'll think, hey, that worked really well there. So that's another piece of advice when it comes to that sort of thing. And I've got a don't do this section. This is because there are a few people, and this is to go back to green screen again. And again, these are kind of obvious, but if you don't point them out, you don't realize you do something, you've wasted all that time doing it. Now, this is things like, do not, whatever you do, zoom in and out with your remote or with whoever's holding your camera when you're recording anything when it comes to green screen, because unless your background does exactly the same thing, you're going to look like you're getting bigger and smaller, and that's just a big no-no when it comes to background stuff. Same goes with moving. Now, if you're moving at all, which is why you need to lock up that tripod and make sure that you don't move anywhere. If you move one tiny little bit, because the background tends to be stationary, you're going to look like you're sort of bouncing around the screen a bit, and not in a natural type way. It's not like you're going to be sliding in and out or walking in and out, anything like that. So it's very important that you lock it in and you keep it there. The same goes on the flip side of things. People were using some background footage that they had that they'd either recorded themselves or something like that, and wondering why it just didn't look very good when they put it on the green screen. And the reason was because it wasn't completely stationary from one point of view from the camera as far as the background was concerned, which meant that every time the background moved, again, it looked like you were jumping around the screen. So you need to be very sure that you've got something locked in on positions when it comes to green screen, unless you're very, very clever at editing and you can actually move yourself with that green screen. There are ways to do that, but that's far more advanced than this is, and this isn't the editing webinar anyway. But if we want to cover that sort of thing, then we could go into that. But that does all sorts of things like motion tracking and all sorts of stuff, which is not something you want to get into at this sort of level, really, especially if you're doing just simple green screen to try it out. So that's the things you shouldn't be doing. Sounds awesome, right? With the sounds awesome, well, just quickly, any questions on that particular thing with the camera stuff about positioning, shots, that sort of thing? Something I should add actually to go with the straight on shot boredom is like try mixing it up a little bit, you know. Try doing some other bits and pieces, like walking onto screen, walking off a screen, stuff like that, you know, just mixing it up a bit rather than just being you stood there all the time. Okay, moving on then. Sounds awesome. This is the microphone bit. People were asking what other microphones they can use, because I do cover what you can use, but some people have different microphones, and some people wanted to know what other ones they could use for different situations. So I've got a couple of different ones you can use here. Now, one is called a shotgun mic, and it's not a real shotgun. It's just like a long, thin kind of microphone. I should have put an image in here really, but I didn't. So you'll have to imagine the shotgun microphone, or just Google it, look it up on Amazon in a short while, and you'll see what I mean. They're basically like a long, thin microphone. And a lot of the time these actually get mounted onto the actual camera. Is when people are like, when we're talking proper, you know, TV station type cameras usually here, and they're actually mounted onto it. They're really, really good for picking up the whole sort of room, things like that. And you can get them and just use them yourself as well. The only thing is they tend to need to be fairly close to the subject. So obviously from our point of view, this means they'll probably be in the shot because we haven't got a camera with it attached to. So what you can actually use is you can use boom stands, you know, like the sort of the classic boom mic coming into the screen at the top of the screen when people are messing up on it. It'll be all right on the night or whatever it is. You can actually use these with these shotgun mics and put them on these boom stands. And then what you do is you just literally have them going over the top of your frame so that you can't see them just outside of the shot. Now, again, you can use boom mics for this sort of thing as well. There's plenty of different types like that. You don't have to have someone holding it. You can just have it on a big boom stand. But obviously, that's another piece of equipment you've got to purchase for that sort of thing. But they are very good. Now, the only downside with shotgun mics and things like that is that you sometimes need what's called phantom power. Now, basically, this means they need a power source to make the amplify. And because if they're connected to a camera that actually provides this for them, then great. But the way that I've just described with the boom stand and that, you might need to give them some power source from somewhere else. And that's something you need to keep in mind if you decide to use that sort of thing. Now, USB mics, a lot of people have got them, and I also recommend like the Yeti and the Snowball and that sort of thing. And people were asking, well, where can I position those so they don't actually show up in shot? Now, what you need to remember is they're pretty good at picking stuff up. I'm actually using a Snowball mic right now to talk to you. And the fact is it's kind of over the back of my desk. They pick up really, really well. So it's exactly the same. Just test it on yours, but it's exactly the same concept when you're coming to your green screen. But always remember that you can cut and crop yourself in your green screen final edits. So even if it's slightly in the screen, as long as you don't like wave your hands over the top of it or anything, you can actually cut it out later. And there are ways to actually, even in Camtasia, there's ways to cut out to certain shapes as well. So you don't have to just have, because one thing I hated about Camtasia, if I'm honest, I won't go into it too much here because it's not the editing class, but it's the fact that you could only actually crop in a square. But there are ways around that, and I will show you that in the advanced editing that we do next week. So just remember, as long as it's not in a place that you're going to be using later, it doesn't really matter where it's positioned as long as it picks up what you're saying. Also, I use lapel mics all the time when I'm doing all of my screen stuff. And someone mentioned about maybe what if someone's moving around a lot, what about the rustle of the clothing, stuff like that. Now I don't tend to have that problem because if you remember, I tape it either inside my clothes or actually onto like my sort of neckline. I actually tape it on there with a bit of gaffer's tape, and it doesn't do that rustling effect too badly because it's against my skin rather than against my clothes. So that's one way to get rid of that. But also, I thought it was worth mentioning you can get wireless lapel microphones, and these are ideal if you're following someone around. Now, I know some people that are doing kind of corporate sort of training type videos where they're walking around, the offices or walking around the factory and showing things like that. And obviously they're walking around. The last thing you want to do is have a lead trailing behind them. So wireless lapel mics are absolutely ideal for this sort of thing. So that's what I would use for those. And that's, sorry, I didn't flick it on, but that's how I position all these different microphones, as well as the different ones that you can actually use. Right, the next thing we had, and again, if you've been in the Facebook VIP group, you will have seen this mentioned, and you might have seen the solution, but I know that some of the people on this call haven't been in there, which shame on you, you should be. But if you haven't, then you won't have seen it. And basically what it was there was a couple of people who are using their smartphones or their iPads to do the recording, and they bought the lapel mic that comes for smartphones because it's a particular type so that you can use the app on the smartphone. But what they found is the lead is really, really short. So the way we got around this problem, after sort of saying a couple of things, was that we actually decided that if you can, and if you've got both of these options, is actually have the smartphone with the app on it recording your voice inside your pocket with obviously the lapel mic going down into there, so the short lead doesn't matter, and then have another smartphone or your iPad recording the actual video. Now the only thing with this is syncing up the audio. And again, as much as this isn't the editing masterclass, it's like the best way for any of this sort of thing is just give yourself a nice big clap at the beginning of the video. And it's very easy to marry up that clap with that sound when it comes to actually putting them together in the editing software. And then from then on, it should all be synced up. So that's our way around the smartphone problem if anyone has gone that route and finds that the lead is way too short. And capturing the mood, I thought it was worth mentioning. Again, you can cheat with this if you want, but it's kind of like the B-roll, but from an audio point of view. Now, if you're out anywhere and you think that, and you're using lapel mics in particular, they're deliberately designed to pick up all the voice and not a lot else. They might pick up noise while they're not speaking, but while they're speaking, it's pretty much just the person. Now, when this comes to translate itself into a video, if you're on location and stuff like that, it actually makes it sound a little bit flat, which is why you tend to put music in the background, things like this. But if you want like the actual noise of the mood, of the ambience of wherever you are, then it's actually quite good practice to go around and just record a bit of background noise. Because then when you get to the editing thing, you can actually put that under as a separate track, and you can have the noise of the factory or the fields or the church or the whatever it may be actually underneath that particular subject. So that's what capturing the mood is. I thought it was well worth pointing that out because some people forget that it doesn't have to just be that person speaking. It's nice to have that extra stuff. And then I've just got some other insights, which some of these I've realised I've actually covered already anyway, but I will just go through these quickly. And we are reaching the end now, so don't panic. I know it's getting late and people need to go to beds and get on with whatever it is they need to do. So we are on the final stretch now. One of these was, like, you don't have to just use your imagination when it comes to green screen in particular. There's no reason why you can't have props and stuff within that particular subject. It doesn't have to all be made up in the background. The reason I thought of this is because of the music video that I shared with you. It's like we did all sorts of stuff on that. We're on green screen, but then we were sort of pretending to point at all sorts of things. And then every now and again, I mean, there's a scene in there where I've got like a rocket strapped to my back and it goes off and it's like you've got flames coming out the back and everything. And I zoom off into the sky. Obviously, the flames and everything were all put on because it was done on a green screen. But the actual rocket, it's a big paper rocket that I'm wearing. It was great fun to put on. But there's no reason why you can't have these props and stuff involved inside your green screen projects, and it really does create that extra dimension, because if someone's actually doing something and it kind of relates to the background you put in, then it's fantastic. Even funny things like, I mean, if you're at Niagara Falls, get someone to throw a bucket of water over you if you're on the outside, obviously. Don't want to be getting it on your camera. But you get what I mean. It adds that kind of, that extra element, that almost 4D element, you know, that's, and it can be really funny. It can be really clever, really good. So it doesn't have to be just your imagination. You can grab all sorts of props and stuff, and you can grab all sorts of things, you know, from anywhere. Use your imagination, but use actual things, not just your imagination, if you get what I mean. And also, it's not just green screen. I've already covered this a lot while we've been talking, but people are using this for all sorts of things. But also, it doesn't have to just be a green backdrop. You could use all sorts of different colours. You could use all sorts of different actual artificial backdrops. I mean, I know people that have done it in front of like pretend libraries and things like that. You might say, what's the point when I've got the green screen? But it's a different feel. It's a different look to it. So I'm just trying to open up sort of ideas and expand your mind to go on to the advanced stages of this. Is you don't have to just use artificial backgrounds. You don't have to just use green screen. You don't, you know, it could be anywhere. It can be an artificial backdrop behind you, but it doesn't have to be something that you take away and put other stuff in there. Okay, so it's just to open up those ideas. And I actually went on to this in a different part, so I actually did this earlier with the camera stuff. But basically, it was about the don't zoom in and out, don't jig around, make sure that your background footage is nice and stable. Otherwise, it just looks awful. And that's it. I apologise for the few little bits and bobs in there. I've had a few little gremlins going on today. But I think we've covered an awful lot. And I think that, you know, we've tried to open up some more possibilities. I've also just noticed I've got the wrong statement on the bottom of that slide, but, you know, I'm a perfectionist, so that's going to annoy me. But it doesn't matter. We've covered an awful lot in this, and we've covered some advanced setups. I've tried to cover everything I did in the main course. So we've done the cameras, the lights, the microphones, the green screens, the studios. Now, I realise there may be people on here that have got really specific things. Now, if you want to throw them in there and I can answer them, then I'm more than happy to right now. But if not, then I will take them away and I will make sure they get answered in the VIP Facebook group. Not a problem. On the note of the VIP Facebook group, it's in there for you to like share your ideas and share your videos and stuff, and it would be nice to get a few more bits and pieces going on in there, purely because it's just quite like the nature of anything. It's quietened down a little bit in there, but if we can all just get involved, I know we can help each other out. There's people at all sorts of levels for you know, for all sorts of different projects and different ideas, and everyone's doing different things, which is awesome. When it first fired up, it's like we've got people doing TV shows, we've got people doing music videos, we've got all sorts of stuff, corporate things, and it'd be nice to get all that together and try and make it into a really good go-to group for everyone. So I'd really appreciate if you did that sort of thing. Stuart, no problem at all. I'm glad you enjoyed. Thank you very much. If anyone has got any questions, I'm going to take a sip of my coffee, so feel free to throw them in the chat box now and I will try and answer them. And like I say, if not, either put them in the Facebook group or throw a support ticket in and I'll sort it out that way instead. Hope you all enjoyed that. My throat managed to go the whole course, which is pretty cool. Oh, you will have, not connected to this really, but you will have got a, it kind of is I suppose because it's training, but you will have got an email earlier today as well. If you go and check it out, it might have gone in your spam folder or whatever. You've probably noticed that I'm not sending you every little thing in the world to this list. I appreciate you as customers. Yes, I send a couple of offers that I think are relevant to you. Actually, if I'm honest, hand on heart, made a bit of a boo-boo with that cloud PBN thing because it turned out to be a load of rubbish. But I thought it was good at the time, genuinely. But I'm trying not to send just any old thing to you guys, and I want to create some more training for you. So I sent an email earlier today which has got a questionnaire on it. Some of you have already filled it out, which is fantastic. But if you could search for that email and just fill it in, that would be fantastic. I can make some training that's really relevant to what you all need, which would be great for me because it means I can make it and I know you're going to appreciate it. So yeah, check that email out. And like I say, I'm not going to be sending spam to all you people. As far as I'm concerned, you're my customers. I appreciate the fact you're my customers. I will send you relevant stuff every now and again, but don't worry. Well, as you can tell, up to now, I haven't done that. I've sent a lot of my own emails. A few people have complained that I sent too many free gifts at the beginning and too many reminders about stuff. But, I've tried to calm that down a bit, so hopefully the ones that are left don't get upset. But yeah, thank you. So yeah, go check that out, that email, because I can do some more material. And next week's webinar is all about editing, advanced editing, stuff like that. So there are some questions I've already got that I will cover. What I'm going to do with that one, because I know that some of the things I want to show you are probably going to eat up the resources on a computer, and it will mean that running a webinar while I do it is going to be quite difficult. So I've got to think of a way to get around that. So this, above all other ones, it's actually really quite important that you get your questions in for that before the actual event, because what I can do then is I can take screenshots and things of me doing these things and show you those. It's very unlikely that I will be able to actually do the edits while I'm running a webinar, plus it would take too long. So if you can get your questions in for advanced editing before, like if you can get them to me sort of before the weekend, that would be absolutely fantastic, because then I can actually work on them while I'm away in London and stuff. But same time next week on the Monday. Looks like I haven't got any questions, so thanks Constance, thank you very much. I will see you next week. Well, I'll speak to you next week. Can't see any of you, but yes, Chris, I know you are. It's that is starting this week as well, so we will sort that out. That's very much tailored to you though, my friend, so that's all good. I will get in touch with you tomorrow actually about that. So digressing slightly, no one else knows, but so yeah, that's it. I think then it looks like I got no questions or anything. If you've got to think of anything, throw it in the Facebook stuff. Yeah, you have a good week as well. Throw it in the Facebook group and I will answer it where I can. I'm going to go and rest my throat now, and I will get everything ready. Please, more than any of the ones up to now, get your questions in for the advanced editing so that I can actually answer them properly. Otherwise, I will have to sort of guess what I think people will want, and I'd much rather do what people need than what I think they need. Okay, so thanks very much. I think that's me done. It's all recorded. I will get this up probably tomorrow, so if you want to go through it again, then you can do. Ask any questions in the Facebook groups. I will see you soon. I am clocking off. Thank you so much once again for joining me and spending your time. Get yourselves to bed, all you UK lot, and get on with whatever you're doing all the rest of you. And I will speak to you real soon. Take care of yourselves. Appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much. Speak to you soon.